All right. Welcome to the Best Damn Podcast. Um, we're going to pick up here. This is part two of Every Knee Will Bow. In part one, we discussed quite a bit actually, and we looked at the secrets of Fatima. Now we're going to dive into the 3 days of darkness, the pre-tribulation, rapture, Schofield, Darby Bible, and I will never listen to the chat ever again because whoever said that the screen wasn't sharing is just a retarded motherfucker. Because I just watched it and it was very much shared. So I don't know if they know what a screen share actually means, but it definitely was. So I will never listen to you guys again on that one. But we're gonna go ahead and get started on this. Just for those that are just tuning in, make sure to hit the like, hit the thumbs up. Let me know what you think in the comments. Share the link, share it to your favorite social media and all that good stuff. Um, that's the best way to help me get it out there. And after like really taking a break with this stuff for quite a while, like I finally, kind of like started fresh in my life in so many different areas, and I am committed to really doing this again, and at least trying to go live 3, 4 nights a week, and we will be offering on Sunday nights. That'll be, for the locals members, the Patreon members, the Facebook subscriptions. All of that. So everybody like that donates, they'll get access to that as well. We have private playlist series on Forbidden Occult, SRA, the Necronomicon, as well as mysteries. This is on the ancient mysteries from the Sumerians to the Norse. Um, to the Greek, right? Even the Hebrews. So I mean, I've got and then I've got hundreds of hours of uncensored content where I break down, the J6 false flag, organ harvesting, human trafficking, pedogate, all the super crazy shit. So that's going to be Sunday nights. We're going to be doing that now for all the people that donate and support and belong to the Patreon and all of that. So and belong to the locals and all the memberships. So Sunday nights, we'll be doing those now. And yeah. So and I do want to encourage everybody. Because I am like starting all over here. If you can support, consider supporting, just kind of help me get going. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this. Hopefully the notification goes out. I don't know why I listen to fucking dude, but uh, let's go ahead and move into it. So I want to thank all of you guys for watching. I appreciate all of you guys. So yeah, well, I mean, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. I still do free content too. So now, where do I want to move into this with? Okay. I've got so much, man. So much. It's so much stuff. It's really a lot. So we'll start with the 3 days of darkness, and then we'll get into the pre-tribulation rapture, and you know, I'm probably gonna go for a while tonight. So it's probably better I broke it down into two parts, anyways. So we'll start off here with the 3 days of darkness, and then we'll get off of the Roman Catholicism. I promise. I don't cover too much of this stuff, but there are some, probably not a lot, but there are a few Catholics that watch. So, in Roman Catholicism, the 3 days of darkness is an eschatological concept believed by some Catholics to be a true prophecy of future events. The prophecy foretells 3 days and nights of an intense darkness over the whole earth. against which the only light will come from blessed beeswax candles, and during which all the enemies of the church will perish. And look, I want to tell you something with the beeswax thing. So, I seen, what was it, Candace Owens that was talking about these schools and shit like this. She thought it was some weird cult or something, just, um, that had bees on it or whatever. So the bees are symbolism of the Merovingian. Okay, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. It would be like some Da Vinci Code type shit, right? Merovingian Illuminati, right? They believe to be having the bloodline of Christ, right? So this bee was a royal representation of this Christ bloodline, right? The bees were. So that's why I think we're seeing the beeswax thing, right? Because of the connection to the Merovingians. Now, also, you know, uh, in the Napoleonic dynasty, Napoleon, put the bee as part of his insignia and stuff, and on his clothes when he was the emperor, right? And I believe that, and remember that all of these kings and emperors, that divine right that they ruled by was actually the fact that they were descendants of these Nephilim, these fallen angels, right? These giants, if you will, right? And I talked about that previously, with Sidonia and the Canaanites and all of this, and how it kind of migrated into Egypt and all of this. And like, then you get these, kings list and all of this. And it's like, remember, these were the heroes of old, the men of renown, right? They were giants. They were Nephilim. They were the children of the fallen angels. And by that was their divine right to be monarchs. Okay. And that's where we get the whole 13 powerful families and all that, Rothschilds or the Red Shields, right? It's representations of Saturn, the cube god, all of this stuff. And I'm sure you guys are very well versed on all of those things. But the whole bee thing comes from the Merovingians, or, like the Da Vinci Code, right? This Illuminati bloodline of Christ. And it's like said, and once again, notice that everything always within all of this undermines scripture. It undermines the story of Christ, right? Like, so we have, the Christ consciousness concept, which basically says, within the new age that we're all our own gods, right? We're all gods. We're all trying to ascend off of our works, which we know that off of our works we can't do it because it's the curse of the law. It's impossible. It's a curse, right? It's a curse. We can't live up to it and to that perfection, right? Um, and because of that, and everything that we interact with in this reality, and I said this in the last video, that we have covenant with, right? We make covenant with, spiritual agreement with, everything that we interact with, everything has a deity, an entity, an energy, a consciousness behind it, right? Archetypical energy. These are different variables of a one large omnipresent type of consciousness, the interdimensional consciousness that doesn't exist within the physical parameters of the world. So it's not strapped down like we are. And I even said this, like when you're talking about God and the Hebrews were talking about God, they were calling like El Shaddai and all these different names, and these were different personalities or personas of God, right? Not separate gods. But they could tell which part of him they were invoking, right? By the names, right? These names. And this Merovingian story basically derives from, Christ didn't actually die, that Thomas the twin was put on the cross instead of him, and that he had a child with Mary Magdalene, or that if he did die, that she escaped and she was pregnant, right? And that she had children, that Jesus wasn't actually sinless, right? That he was having sex with the prostitute, Mary Magdalene, right? and that was his wife. Okay, so uh, I believe with the Mary Magdalene thing, it's extremely allegorical to like the horror of Babylon. That's just one of my own personal thoughts when it comes to that, right? And Christ being kind to that spirit, But I do believe it also took place in the physical world, but I don't believe that he was married to her. And I don't believe he had children with her. The Bible says he doesn't. And once again, these undermine his divinity, right? Like when saying like that Mary, and we know like in the Talmud, it basically says that Mary was an adulteress and a whore, you know, and that, Christ is boiling in his own excrement, and that, even the best of the Gentiles deserve to be done away with, and all these things. These are incredibly vile and, venomous, vicious, uh, accusations that are levied against Christianity. So it's like when we always talk about how they are the friends of Christians and all of this, the allies of Christians and of America, it's just mind blowing to me. It's like, no, they killed Jesus for one. They denied who he was. They still deny who he is. He's not even a prophet to them, like the Muslims think he's a prophet, right? Which still is not God, right? So it's still making him less than what he is, and they elevate the Prophet Muhammad. Um, but with the Merovingian thing, it's like saying he had a kid, all of this, and like that's, just makes him human, just human. So the prophecy parallels one of the 10 plagues against Egypt in the book of Exodus. The Apocalypse of John also mentions a plague of unnatural darkness as an effect of the fifth vial. And the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness. Unnatural darkness is also associated with the sixth seal of Revelation. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. However, the specifics of the 3 days of darkness prophecy, such as the miraculous beeswax candles, are derived from private revelation. Remember, like candles represents like illumination, right? The beeswax, right? Like this Christian illumination, right? Or this divine illumination, right? Like so. We could see this interpreted in a multitude of ways. What is the 3 days of darkness prophecy? In certain Catholic prophetic circles, there's a concept known as the 3 days of darkness. And like once again, when we think about this time of darkness, this takes us back, and you can see in part one, where I'm talking about Lupus Negra and the hollow earth, and how the waters that separate the firmament above, meaning the heavens, they're the aeons above the firmament, and the underworld or Sheol, the heavens below, right? And Earth representing this Midgard or jumping off point to launch above and below into the dimensional space. And that all of these dimensions are brought together by CERN, some type of portal. Something happens, something takes place, whether it's the breaking of the firmament, who knows what actually kicks this all into action. But when it does, that's when the sun turns black. You see the smoke rising up like a furnace up out of the bottomless pit, right? The king of the bottomless pit, Abaddon or Apollyon, right? Sheba, the destroyer, is unleashed on the earth. He's also Apophis or Apep, the Egyptian deity of chaos and darkness, right? He's got many names, but he's been through all cultures and all times, just like we deal with every entity, every character, every creature, everything. It's always in all cultures, right? So it's like that's how you know how real this stuff truly is. It's like embedded in the subconscious of humanity, and we told it as mythologies and stuff to continue to keep it active within us, and whether that's for good or bad, right? And we have these perverse versions of the story, right, through the polytheistic point of view and this paganistic point of view that kind of like obscures things and gives us more of this distorted base version. Now, one of the most famous quotations about this event is attributed to the Italian mystic Beata Maria Tyche. She is said to have stated, "There shall come over the whole earth an intense darkness lasting 3 days and 3 nights. Nothing can be seen, and the air will be laden with pestilence, which will calm mainly, but not only, the enemies of religion. It will be impossible to use any man-made lighting during this darkness except blessed candles. He who out of curiosity opens his windows to look or leaves his home will fall dead on the spot. During these 3 days, people should remain in their homes, pray the rosary, and beg God for mercy. All the enemies of the church, whether known or unknown, will perish over the whole earth during the universal darkness, with the exception of a few whom God will soon convert. The air shall be infected by demons who will appear under all sorts of hideous forms." Right? And this, to me, is also like we were talking about with the Tracy Twyman and what is the name of the book? I said the name of the book earlier. Flock Shavings, right? Where she does this seance and talks to Cain, the Black Sun, and to Baphomet, right? And they speak of this time, right? Which is also mentioned in the Hopi prophecy as well as the Bible and all of this, right? The opening of this bottomless pit, or this time when time stops and all dimensions kind of unite and come together. And that's what allows, those fallen angels that are, imprisoned, in Sheol or under the earth, to come out. And it's a plague of demons, like in the Illuminati card game, the card, plague of demons, right? They're unleashed onto man. And this is like the last days, right? When things are really bad. You don't want to be there for that. Um, but I see the different interpretations of this as well. I always looking at things as an occultic, esoteric view whenever I look at stuff. So yeah, I look at things because I feel like where we live in a linear, or we have a linear, logical based society. Pretty much where everything is like physically oriented and on a linear time frame because we live under the construct or the illusion of time. But in truth and in reality, we are multi-dimensional entities, and we are interacting with multiple dimensional spaces of reality all at the same time. That's why you're a 3D being, right? That's three different dimensions you're in right there. The 4D, 5D being consciousness, there's 4 or 5 different dimensions you're acting in there. You feel me? So you're in multiple dimensions, right? Whether your focused attention is in the physical plane, but you have the mental plane, all of these different planes of existence, right? And I even went and talked about, before how I believe the heavenly host, uh, they're all vibrating, giving off their own frequencies, and the Lord of hosts being God, right? Which creates the heavens. They're singing constantly to God, giving off their frequencies or vibrations. But you see the planets, which the etymology of that means the wandering stars, right? And those are the ones who transgressed their orbit or their path, as according to the book of Enoch and to the Bible. It talks about these 7 stars and all of this, right? They represent the 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 days of the week. Remember, the 7 colors of the rainbow represent the covenant with God. And then we talk about soul luminescence and star in a jar, and how these governors or rulers of the reality, watchers, are actively imposing upon the reality. So we're made up of the gods, and we're made up of the God, right? So that's that caduceus, right? That double helix, those 2 serpents. We have both within us, that good and evil. That's why it's this duality, right? This dualistic reality or paradigm. But those are dimensional beings and in dimensional spaces, and those planets, base word is plane. Those are planes of existence, right? Dimensional planes. They have their own harmonic resonance and vibration and frequency that they're outputting into the cosmos, right? Um, and it can be embodied by archetypes and all of this, but nonetheless, right, it's impacting and influencing on us. That's why you see, like, just for an example, whenever you hear somebody like that's incredibly like Venusian, right? That's an idea. Like, we think it's just an idea, but like a Venusian is, that energy, that's a plane, right? In the world of Venus, or the energy of Venus, that's what it embodies. That's what it is, all aspects of that Venusian energy, right? Because like how, and then think about us, we have our electrochemical antenna, which is the pineal or the third eye, right? Which allows us to receive, input and output within these different dimensions, right? Even though our focus is trapped in the physical, we're able to shift our focus into other spaces. We call it astral projection. You know, so when we look at that, think about there shall come the time the whole earth is in intense darkness, lasting 3 days. Remember, a day, 1,000 years is a day to God. So these 3 days of darkness could be talking about a 3,000 year period. And if you think about the precession of the equinox, which is about 26 to 2,800 years, right? Is this an age? An age of darkness? Following the return of Christ, and we call it like the little season of, which so many people believe we're in now, but no, I don't believe we are at all, which I'll get into as we move into the Schofield and Darby study Bible and all that. And says nothing can be seen, and the air will be laden with pestilence. And the air is representation of the ether, right? So it's like, it's like demonic energy or spirits, right? That heaviness, that oppression. It would be impossible to use any man-made lighting during this darkness, right? Meaning that God is what will be the only thing that lights the way, you know. Except blessed candles, we could see that as, a correlation to like those who are blessed by the God, the remnant, chosen, the elect, etc. When he, out of curiosity, opens his windows to look out or leaves his home, he'll fall dead on the spot, right? Like open ourselves up to that energy. I'm just kind of giving you this. I do believe it'll take place in the physical, and that's how things happen. That's why we see prophetically, this timeline of events. It'll happen. Things will happen in the physical realm, politically, geographically, as well as individually on an individual level, both eternally and externally, and we'll see it happen astrologically, and we'll see it happen collectively. That's because there's that many different dimensions that are being interacted on. And we think, which is spirit permeates all of them, right? So it's interacting with every space. Just because we interact in the physical, we think that's the only space that's being affected. But no, everything's playing out on every level all the time. We're just usually not aware of it because we don't have that expansive focus to be able to be aware of it. Another mystic, Marley Julie Jahani, 1850 to 1941, is said to have claimed that only 100% wax candles will work. This has led people to selling pure beeswax candles to Catholic households for use during the event. Some Catholics have been very concerned about this event because if it were to occur as described, it would be terrifying. Yeah, you think? It'd be really freaking terrifying, wouldn't it? You literally, there's such a darkness over the earth. And think about, in the time of the destroyer, And when we read the Colburn just the other day, right, which was the pre-Diluvian, allegedly the pre-Diluvian text written on brass or copper or whatever, right? And it was the basically Egyptian point of view of Exodus, and it had 3 chapters written on the destroyer. Well, after those 3 chapters written on the destroyer, there was a following chapter, and I read it in that video on the dark days. Right, the dark days were following the coming of the destroyer, right, which is the day of the Lord, right, the days of wrath, the days of judgment, right. And think about how God talks about the sun not giving its light. This is judgment day. Like this type of stuff is what we're talking about dealing with. And at that time, there's no, remember, like it says that, the Holy Spirit will leave, the earth. So I mean, when it's gone, there's only darkness, right? So, and even Hopi and other native tribes, like they don't even go outside at night, because they were told by the Kachinas and stuff not to do so, because that's when they went out and played, basically the Kachinas. What should we make about the prediction, how credible it is, and what does the church have to say about it? The answer is the last question is easy. Nothing. The church has nothing to say about it. A search of the Vatican website reveals no occurrences of the phrase 3 days of darkness. The 3 days of darkness is not a matter of church teaching. 3 days of darkness in the Bible. Can it be supported by the Bible? Websites advocating the 3 days of darkness regularly appear in the 9th plague of Exodus 10:21 through 29, which God caused 3 days of darkness in Egypt. However, there is a reference to a historical event, not a prediction of a future one. Appeal was also made to Revelation 6:12 and 6:10 with the 6th seal and the 5th vial. These chapters in Revelation most likely pertain to events early in church history, not our future. I disagree with that. I believe there's nothing new under the sun. And the Colburn says the same thing as well. It says that the days of wrath, right, which was, Sodom and Gomorrah and all of these resets that have happened in the past, the destroyer comes, and it surely comes at the end of the age every time. It's cyclical, right? Nothing new under the sun. That's why you see in the Bible, Paul says it's meaningless. Everything is meaningless. It's all been done before. There's nothing new under the sun. We're on repeat. It's like this matrix programming, if you will. We're running in circles or in orbits, right? Think about the concept of orbit. That's a circle. That's a cycle, right? That's why it's always called the heavenly spheres or the celestial spheres, right? Because everything is in a circular fashion in the heavens. That's why you see a lot of the architecture of the Tartarian Empire, which Tartarian derives from Tartarus, right? That's where, that's hell, essentially. That's where the giants were thrown into. So I believe it was an empire of giants. And when you look at the buildings, it looks like if it was so, right? So that means they were probably wiped off the earth a lot more recently than we actually think. And all of their structures, that have all of this, the stained glass, which is a cymatic pattern for, the cathedral's acoustics and the sound, and these were temples of healing, of sound energy, and all of this, right? And they had bells that rang, and bells were supposed to drive away evil energy. And bells also correlate to the same frequency of the cross and Jesus and all of this. And that's why you see with the Nazis and the removal of all the bells in the towns, right? They were like erasing the old history of this age, and then we've seen all of the, everything, operating off of the ethers and Mercury and magnetism and all of this. It was more of a natural type of energetic, technology. And it could even be the Atlanteans as well, right? I believe it probably was. Remember, Atlantis means of the Atlantic, right? So of Atlas, or of, it's Poseidon's kids, basically, right? Because he's of the water, right? Now, kind of like take it into concept that, uh, it's saying that none of this, so it's like when this judgment day happens, things, that darkness comes because this combining of the dimensions. Hell is leashed on earth. That's why people seek death and won't find it. The sun doesn't give its light, all of these things, because we are living in the time has been broken. It's no longer anymore. Now, the origins of the prophecy are unclear, but it has been attributed to a number of saints and mystics through history. Some believe it comes from Saint Hildegard of Bingen, while others attribute Saint Patrick or Saint Teresa of Avila. This is a problem, because if any of these figures predicted that 3 days of darkness, it should be possible, to find the prediction in their writings, and nobody's been able to do so. It thus appears that some advocates of the view have attempted to give it an air of antiquity by associating older saints with it. Patrick, who lived in the 400s, Hildegard in the 1100s, and Teresa, who lived in the 1500s, even though they made no predictions about it. The idea that there appears to be of a more recent origin. But you know what? Then think about that whole it's almost like a worship of the Tartarian Empire now. It's like, oh, look how great we were. It's like, was that even us? Right? And it's all these curved structures because it allows energy to flow freely. And that's like the whole, thing with the cube god Saturn. Whenever you go into a cube or a box, right? Whenever you turn a light on in a room, uh, the corner is always the last place, for the light to permeate, and for the last place for the light to leave. The energy is trapped in angles, right? Angles, right? So this whole chain, that's why you get the solar system, soul system, ruled by Saturn and his, hexagonal black cube. You think about the base word of that, hex, right? The hex, or, planet X, the Xing out of a soul, the cursing, the crossing, the double crossing, right? Now, there are numerous visionaries operating today, and some of them do speak for the 3 days of darkness. However, what these visionaries have in common is that none of them has been investigated and has had his visions approved. Some visionaries authentically receive private revelations, but some are hoaxers, because hoaxers exist in every age, including our own, whereas the others may be innocently imagining things based on what they have read in visionary literature. This is why it is important to have competent investigations done rather than simply giving credibility of purported revelations. For example, the case of the once very popular Canadian mystic, Frater Michel Rodriguez, who was repudiated by bishops and whose prophecies have subsequently been falsified. It was set aside, disproved, and uninvestigated claims. What are we left with? Some advocates of the 3 days of darkness have claimed that St. Pio of Pietrelcina, Padre Pio, predicted it. However, the quotation was given with no traceable source, and the Capuchin order that belonged to that has denied that he ever made such a prediction. This also appears to be a case of someone trying to lend the prediction credibility by associating it with a popular modern saint. Oh. Now, there is no question Bianca Maria Taggi saw of clouds of darkness and other horrific disasters descending upon the earth during the times of the punishments. This has been mentioned during her beatification process as seen above. The mention a specific time frame of 3 days for the foretold purge of the earth was first allegedly revealed by her spiritual director, Dio Rafael Natali, who was not only her strongest supporter during the beatification process, but also gave ample testimony regarding her visions, for in obedience she had told him everything. According to an article in the El Ermitaño, Natali revealed the following. It is very true that the venerable servant of God announced the scourge of the 3 days of darkness spread all over the earth. In these circumstances, the windows should be closed, and leaning over them should be avoided, and it will be imperative to pray the Holy Rosary and pray. No. Shit. Okay, I think we're good now. All right. I want to switch to, so we got the 3 days of darkness. It's not, it's not supported by the church, right? So, there's that. Now, I want to get to the rapture doctrine. So, first I want to pull up, where's it at? So we've looked at, we have looked at the Secret to Fatima, the 3 days of darkness, and all of this, right? Now, these are the passages about Christ's return, and we're just going to read a few of these before we jump into this pre-tribulation rapture stuff, because this is a big one, man. This is huge, like churchianity, and that's what I like to call it, because that's what it is. It's not Christianity to me. It's got nothing to do with Christ. It's all about, the physical building and making money, and there's nothing wrong with making money, but you can't serve two masters. you know um and I feel like you can't effectively, and I know this firsthand, you can't effectively like do that kind of work when you're worried about money or a business, right? Like you can't. It's just impossible. It's like you can't do both. It's like, you start compromising your message because you're trying to push for money, right? Because you have overhead costs, and think about, church and all of this. They have the bands, the smoke machines, the lights, and all of this. It's just large production, and it is a business, right? The donuts and everything else, you know. these mega pastors and mega churches making, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And basically just taking advantage of all their poor parishioners, and saying, and we've seen this with televangelists and all of this, and most of them, are part of Operation Mocking Pastor, and, they're very politically aligned, and, you know, uh, with the political alignment, with the political alignment, um, they're pushing for political parties, uh, like we see with like the Trump movement and all of the, the pastors with that, and they're all pushing, towards this Zionism and all of this as well, right? So, and when you think about the whole, the Zionist shit, and also, it's like these are, people pushing, they're paid by, APAC and these lobbies and all of this, right? It's corrupt to the bone, is what it is. It's corrupt to the bone. It's all based around like making their money, this large, enterprise, and then it's all built on false doctrines like, oh, well, if we, bless Israel and then you will be blessed. All of these different things, right? Well, Israel isn't a satanic political state of Zionist, that was created in 1948, with the Star of Moloch as their flag. That same star is what they flew under, during the Bolshevik Revolution when they slaughtered tens of millions of Christians, by the way. Right? So, um, you can take that with a grain of salt if you want, but either way, it's the truth. So, we have these particular scriptures surrounding, Christ's return. Matthew 24:25. The sign's coming like a thief in the night with a final judgment. Mark 13, Luke 21, parallel accounts to Matthew's teaching about the coming of the Son of Man. Acts 1:9 through 11, angels tell the disciples Jesus will return in the same way he departed, which is he departed visibly. So he'll return visibly. You will see him, right? Every knee will bow, right? Even those who every tongue will confess, even those who pierced him, right? And who pierced him? Who pierced him? Think about that. Rapture language believers in Thessalonians, raised or caught up to meet the Lord, right? And this is a key pastoral text, but sorry, it means caught up in the air. It means they were killed. It says one is in the field and the other is taken. And if you look at what taken means, it means killed. One is killed and the other is alive. There's two standing in the field. One dies and the other doesn't. You know? First Corinthians, transformation of the dead and living at the end, the resurrection, right? And then we talked about this with the North Mistos and the nail ship, right? The hands and the fingernails, or the finger and toenails of the dead at the bottom of the sea being the sea underneath the firmament or Sheol, right? And then we see with the tetragrammaton, right? And Yahweh, hands nailed, feet nailed, right? These similarities. It's like this thing has been written and embedded in the code of creation since the beginning, y'all. Jesus' name is written all over everything. And I don't know if you've ever had a personal experience. Look, I can tell you this, and this is some real stuff right here. When I had extreme demonic oppression, extreme, that's what it like God through that name Jesus, right? He gave powerful that works. And I didn't even know that I had anything in me. Like I didn't. I was just wondering why my life was falling to shambles, why I was like fucking becoming schizophrenic and like all this stuff. I had no clue. I'm like, what is going on with me? Like, it was bad. And then when I had that, it was like I could literally feel like the hand of God like grabbing it by the root and just jerking it out of my soul. And every time the name was like spoken, or I spoke it, or, it was like I had tears just profusely just pouring out of my face. And I was literally dry heaving and vomiting. And I know that sounds crazy, like something out of an Exorcist movie, but that is what happened. Panting like a dog. And, this wasn't with the person or anything. I did this in my own private, um, but I mean, I could feel it being torn out by the root. Literally torn out by the root. The parasite that was in me. And it wasn't me that was responding to it like that, if this makes sense. It was the parasite in me responding to that. So my body was like having a physical reaction to this parasite being rooted out and ripped out of my soul, and it came in the form of dry heaving and throwing up. One of my crazier experiences, I won't lie. And it really changed the way I seen things. Like I felt the true, genuine, pure power and rank of it, of that spirit. And I knew like this was the creator. I knew it. Like there was no denying it. Like my mind knew it, my emotions knew it, my soul knew it. And because I was confronted with this spirit, I felt so much remorse. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like just true shame and sadness and not because of like things I had done, but because I had disappointed the spirit. If that makes sense. It's like I felt the love, the unconditional love, the unconditional love of the spirit so much so, which was the creator. It was God. It was Christ. I felt his love so much so. I felt his love so much so that it's like I just knew, I was just so ashamed of myself for like letting him down. I don't know how to explain it. Like in going against him, I didn't even know that I was like going against him, but I was. It's like I just felt just a remorse. I couldn't even put it into words. Like my soul cried. Because like the love from God is so profound, so much more than we can even wrap our human minds around. And I don't know if any of you have ever had these experiences or not, but Matthew 9:27, Christ appeared a second time for salvation of those who await him. James 5:7 and Second Peter, judgment, the day of the Lord, and warnings about scoffers, right? Like scoffers and mockers, right? It's your ass on that day. And I've told this many times that I started this channel and doing the content and all of this because of a dream I had, you know, and it was a dream of the end of the world, completely, it was done. And, when it talks about this darkness, like these 3 days of darkness and Men's hearts will fail them for fear, and like their courage will flow from them like water from a broken pitcher, and all of these things. It's like I seen it. I seen it. And it was terrifying. There was nothing good about it. So it's like when people talk about, I can't wait for Jesus to return. I can. I want him to come when I'm really, really old and gray, you know? Because the world is over when he arrives. It's done. It's done. And don't give me that new age nonsense of that it never ends. That's bullshit. The Bible says it's done. It says the heavens and the earth will pass away with a fervent heat and a great noise, right? Or a great roar. The skies will roll back like a scroll. Islands and mountains are removed from their place. The sun will be turned to, black as sackcloth made of goat hair. The moon turned to blood. And then in the Copeland it says a new moon will appear in the sky before being broken into pieces. I mean, Star Wormwood, all of these things, it's bad news, right? It turns the water to blood, killing a third of the earth. Like, it's bad, you know. And then, and there's even, scriptures and texts that talk about this, that people that talk about that, wanting that day to come don't understand it. It's a lack of understanding. They don't have the true understanding of what that day means, or you wouldn't ask for it. You would not ask for it because you're going to be shitting your pants. Seriously, you're about to fuck around and find out. Yeah. And in my dream, when the sky turned red, instantly, it was like a switch had been flipped. And everybody that, was in the vicinity with me, I was in this building, and there was this giant square window. I was looking out of this window, and I kept turning around and telling everybody what was going on. It was like a room full of people, and they're all like listening to me. And I just kept turning around, telling them, like giving them the play-by-play of like whatever was happening. It was weird. Then all of a sudden the sky turned blood red, and I felt it before I seen it. I felt it. And I was afraid to turn around because I already knew what had happened. I already knew everybody become inhabited by demons. And think about the Hopi when it talks about how, things that have not been ever even walked the earth, or from the beginning of time will be walking the earth, and they'll inhabit the bodies of men. We'll have multiple entities inside of us, and I believe it. Because all of their eyes turned solid black, and they were just like drooling, and they had these grins. Like some of them were like hysterically crying, some of them were like grinning with anger, and just it was demonic. It was so demonic. And as I walked, I walked out of the room for whatever reason. I knew it was time to leave. And when I did, they just parted like the Red Sea. It was like they couldn't touch me, but I knew they wanted to. Like I knew they wanted to end me. And my children were with me as well. I came out of that building and I walked under this giant arch, right? And this, I don't know, if this is a representation. I had looked up, an arch and what it means, and that it's a representation of the firmament, But there was also, with the representation of the firmament, it looked like I was in like Rome. It was like Roman columns and shit like that were around too. It was weird. And everybody had went crazy. Like they were jumping off of buildings. They were crashing their cars into each other. They were just smoking themselves, and just the earth was opening up everywhere. just opening up and swallowing people. It was absolutely horrifying. And then I heard, the words that everything that can be shaken will be shaken. And I looked off to, what I would call the east horizon, and I could see these like fireballs or balls of plasma or something just raining down on the earth, pounding this area, pounding it. And I just knew whatever was there was not surviving that. Nobody. um, and as I scanned more toward, and then and it kind of like reminds me of like destruction coming from the east. Like that's kind of like how the order of the things I seen it was like the far east, and I just moved, my gaze towards the west. Um, I scanned over, like I'm moving more towards, what's in front of me. And then I seen this giant, like brown moon, and it had already hit the earth. And it was broken in pieces, just like the Colburn had said. And I had never read the Colburn at that time to even know that. And it was like 4 pieces, but you could still see the shape of it. And you could still see chunks of earth like floating off slow motion from the impact. It's like kind of low on the horizon too. And then about that time, I looked up from the moon and I could see like what looked like a fireball, but a big one. And it was reddish fireball off in the distance. And I thought, what in the fuck is that? Just to keep it real. Like it scared me when I seen it. And it did look kind of like a blazing red comet type of thing, but it's like it wasn't a comet either. I don't know how to explain it. And then like it wasn't a second, dude. A second, like as my head turned, the next thing you know, the fireball went from being off in the distance in space and looking like it was headed towards us to just popping up from underneath the earth and covering like almost the entire sky. Like it had just popped up on us like fuck like that. Like just I seen it off in a distance 1 second, like I blinked, and the next thing you know, it was coming up from underneath the earth, like just popped up on us. Um and that's the crazy part, and it's like when it did, it looked like the planet Jupiter. Like it looked like this giant red striped, dark red, planet like Jupiter. It was striped though. And when it popped up, the entire earth just started shaking. It felt like somebody had picked the earth up and was shaking it, like just shaking it as hard as they could. And every building that my eyes could see, everything. I don't care if it was a tree, it was made by man, it didn't matter what it was. It just crumbled like sand, literally, like sand, like it was nothing. It just disintegrated. And what was crazy, like I said, I heard that everything that can be shaken will be shaken. And I'm standing there looking up at this giant fucking planet covering the sky with my children, and we're holding hands. Um, and we didn't move. Like the earth is opening up all around me, swallowing people. It's like we didn't even fall down. And then this voice from like behind the planet. I could tell it wasn't the planet talking. It was something else, like from behind it or something like God, like the universe speaking to me or something. It was booming though. And here's the crazy part. When the voice spoke, it woke me up out of this lucid dream. And I was no longer in my bed. I was in my hallway standing up, like at the other end of my house. And I didn't just hear the words in the dream, I heard them audibly in my ear, and the voice was so powerful, it like vibrated my bones too. And when the voice hit me, it just said, "Trust God, John." And I collapsed onto the floor and just, because the voice was that powerful, I couldn't stand after hearing the voice. Couldn't stand after hearing the voice. And I wanted to ask questions, like what the hell I had just seen and what that was, but I knew deep down what that was. And I was so thankful, because it was so terrifying to me. I was so thankful for this voice that the only words that my mouth could utter was thank you. And I have tears just pouring out of my eyes. It was just the wildest experience ever. I've never had anything like that before or since. And it imprinted on me in such a crazy way because 2 weeks before this dream happened, I had prayed and I just said, I want to know, the truth about everything. Teach me the truth about everything. And I want to know if Jesus is real and if he is, I'll give you my life if you'll use me in the most powerful way possible. And then 2 weeks later, I have this dream. So, and I know some people have heard that, but, I feel like now it's more relevant than ever. I was literally waiting on this to happen the next day when it happened. I'm like, is this gonna happen today, tomorrow? I was scared shitless, I didn't know what I had just experienced. Yeah. So let's we'll read a couple more here, and then we'll jump over to this pre-diluvian stuff. I mean, not pre-diluvian, but pre-tribulation rapture. So you can see where this actually comes from, and that it's not scriptural. It's not sound doctrine. It's, in my opinion, and you can believe what you want. But I just told you where the one verse that they pick and choose. This is what churchianity does. They pick and choose. And remember, this is a big indicator of, what type of crap they're on, right? Because God says, they're like, Lord, Lord, didn't I, cast out demons in your name? Didn't I perform miracles in your name? And what does he say to them? Get away from me, you doers of iniquity. Flee from me, you doers of iniquity. I never knew you. I never knew you. Think about that. They're performing miracles, they're casting out demons, they're doing exactly what he says they would do. And they don't serve him, they serve money. They're building these $1 million churches and these large businesses and these 501c3 corporations and shit, basically. They're in bed with the government. They're taking, foreign money, from AIPAC and all of this shit from the Israeli lobby. They're completely entangled with Zionism and all of this, and it's like, and then they have these doctrines that aren't even biblical whatsoever. They come from a bunch of Freemasons and Zionists and Jesuits. So let's go to that now, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. That way you can see I'm not bullshitting here when I'm telling you, like, what they're trying to push on people, what they're trying to tell everybody is what? That's not what it is, y'all. Like, it's not what it is. So, all right, boom, here we go. The origin of the rapture false doctrine. John Darby, 1830 AD. And you know what? I shouldn't have to give these I shouldn't have to give these kind of like disclaimers anymore, but I feel like I still do. Anything that I'm talking about, I would love it if people could truly emotionally detach themselves from it and have an open mind to what's being said. And like, first off, it's got nothing to do with me, right? Like, what I'm saying has nothing to do with me. So it's like you're not learning from me per se. It's like it's all about the important focus is focusing on God, you know. So don't use me as a metric of it, right? Like I'm imperfect, flawed, and a piece of crap. Like, so if you try to use me as the metric, I'm gonna disappoint you and let you down, and I'm gonna be your excuse of why it's no good, because I'm no good, you know. Um, and for two, it's like don't emotionally marry yourself to these ideologies, right? Because that's not a truth-seeking spirit, for one, you know. And this is how, mind control effectively works and cognitive dissonance effectively works. It's by us, having this, emotional response to something because we personalize it and we individualize it and we identify with it, especially when it comes to political ideologies and religious beliefs, right? That's such a big part of our identities and who we believe we are, which we're not, but who we think we are because this is the perception that the world has given to us, right? And we accept it at face value without question. It's like, oh, I'm a conservative, I'm a MAGA, pro-Trumper, I'm a Christian, and da-da-da-da, it's like, you're identifying with all of these labels. These labels are part of this construct, and this construct is corrupt. You're supposed to be in the world, not of it. Number one, and then when you get emotionally offended by it because I'm saying, oh, this pre-tribulation rapture, because you've been taught by a pastor, right? These people go to, seminary and, get their theologian degree and all of this, and they're indoctrinated into this Zionist stuff. They're indoctrinated into it. That's the only way they get their degrees. These churches, when they join the Christian Alliance, they have to meet certain requirements through a 501c3 to get their government discounts and money. So then they follow a certain group of parameters and rules and regulations, etc., and become that business, that corporation, that entity. Remember, corporation is corpus orate, right? A speaking dead man, a speaking body, a speaking corpse. Orate means to speak. Oration, corpus orate, right? Talking Dead. That's what it is. The Talking Dead. Let the dead bury the dead. And then they're in bed with these political ideologies and think about the politics, right? The pole, right? It's polarizing, right? Political, polarizing, right? Meant to polarize or divide or separate. These aren't courageous men, right? They're not being courageous, brave men speaking up for truth. They're cowards. They're taking money from foreign governments and from our government and all of this, right? To speak certain doctrines and to put certain stuff out there because they're too afraid to actually say the truth. A lot of them know what it is. We're supposed to be bold in Christ. Number one, rapture doctrine is one of the most recent new doctrines in the history of the church. The only doctrine more recent is the invention of the sinner's prayer for salvation by Billy Sunday in 1930, which was made popular by Billy Graham in 1935. He's a real winner when he was alive, right? The fact that John Nelson Darby invented the pre-tribulation rapture doctrine around 1830 AD is unquestionably true. All attempts to find evidence of this wild doctrine before 1830 have failed. Failed with a single exception. Morgan Edwards wrote a short essay as a college paper for Bristol Baptist College in Bristol, England in 1744, where he confused the second coming with the first resurrection of Revelation 20 and described a pre-tribulation rapture. However, Edwards' ideas, which he admitted were brand new and never before taught, had no influence in the modern population of the false doctrine. That prize goes to Darby. Prior to 1830, no church taught it in their creed. Prior to 1830, no church taught it in their creed, catechism, or statement of faith. Darby had a profound impact on religion today since Darby's, quote, secret rapture, false doctrine, has infected most conservative evangelical churches, while the official creeds and statements of faith of many churches either reject or are silent about rapture. Neither do they openly condemn this doctrine of a demon from the pulpit. While not all dispensationalists believe in the rapture, all those who teach the rapture also believe in premillennialism. Both groups use Israel's modern statehood status of 1948 to be a beginning of a countdown to the end. Say what? They use the creation of a satanic political state to base their doctrine off of. Israel means he who wrestles with God. All premillennialists, rapturists, and dispensationalists alive today believe the Bible reveals a general era of when Christ will return. The date setters of the 1800s, Seventh-day Adventists, who are date-setting premillennialists who reject the rapture, Jehovah's Witnesses, who have set many dates, base their predictions upon speculative arrangements of numbers and chronologies in the Bible. Today's date setters, without exception, wrongly believe that Israel gaining statehood in 1948 fulfilled Bible prophecy and that Christ would return within one generation. There are two kinds of premillennialists, the date setters and date teasers. Date setters set specific dates, which are in fact a countdown clock to the extinction of their own ministries. It gives the whole list of them, and like the date setter I mentioned earlier. Right? The dude that does the psionics and stuff like that with the CE5 stuff, talking about the Star of Regulus and all of this, over the Great Pyramid and Easter of 2026, right? Anybody ever giving you a date is a fucktard, and you should not listen to them because the Bible is really specific. It says no man knows the day or the hour of the coming of the Lord, not even the angels in heaven. Chris Bledsoe is his name. There are two kinds of premillennialists, those date setters, date teasers. Date setters are set in specific dates with a countdown clock to the extinction of their own ministries. Date teasers share the same rhetoric of urgency that the end is very soon, but refuse to look into a specific date. Share the same rhetoric of urgency that the end is very soon, but refuse to look into a specific date. Most of the TV preachers who promote rapture and or date set all wrongly believe they are a prophet of God with special illumination. Pentecostals believe they are inspired directly from the Holy Spirit as modern day prophets. Baptists believe they are illuminated with guidance from the Holy Spirit through the Calvinist doctrine of irresistible grace. Christians reject all these false notions of God illuminating man and rely upon the pages of the Bible alone as a sole source of conduct and doctrine. And the false assumptions of the rapture and premillennialism. False, the kingdom is something distinct from the church. Truth, the kingdom is the church, which was established on the day of Pentecost in 33 AD. And we are in the kingdom now. False, reviving the Roman Empire to keep time prophecies of Daniel 2:7-8-9 from failing. Truth, the final kingdom Daniel saw was Rome. God set up his kingdom during the Roman Empire, which began in 30 BC, and yet was destroyed in 397 AD. The kingdom is the church, which was started at Pentecost. 3. False. Daniel saw 13 kingdoms. And there's that occult number, right? Truth. Daniel saw 4 kingdoms. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. The last kingdom had 10 toes, representing 10 Caesars or rulers or kings, not 10 identical king forms for a total of 13 kingdoms. False. Christ will return in one generation from the time Israel began a nation in 1948. Truth. Matthew 23:24 and 24:34 speaks about the Herodian temple, and Jerusalem will be destroyed. Moving on here. False Israel possessed all the land promised to Abraham and must return to fulfill this promise. Truth. God made these promises to Abraham, and all three were fulfilled at the time of Joshua. Solomon and the Lord gave them rest on every side, according to all that he had sworn to their fathers. And no one of all of their enemies stood before them. The Lord gave all of their enemies into their hand. Not one of the good promises which the Lord had made to the house of Israel failed. All came to pass. False. The Mosaic Old Testament temple will be rebuilt on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, complete with animal sacrifices and Aaronic priests. Truth. The Old Testament was nailed to the cross and abolished. Hebrews, to go back to animal sacrifices, to deny Christ, and I testify again to you, every man who receives circumcision, that he is under obligation to keep the whole law. False, the Mosaic Old Testament will be rebuilt. You have been severed from Christ. You are seeking to be justified by the law, and you have fallen from grace. Galatians 5. Restoring animal sacrifices nullifies the sacrifice of the blood of Christ on the cross, which was the last blood sacrifice for all future eternity. Every priest stands daily ministering and offering time after time the same sacrifices, which one can never take away. Take away sins. And he offered one sacrifice of sins for all time, sat down at the right hand of God. False, entering the seventh millennium in 2000 AD. Truth, the Bible indicates that the world is about 6,119 years old and 27. The prophetic clock stopped in the 69th week of Daniel's prophecy when the Jews rejected Christ as their earthly king because God wasn't expecting the Jews to reject Jesus. Each of the first 69 weeks was a period of 7 years. But he last week has already been almost 2,000 years. The prophetic shock starts ticking again at the rapture, which is the beginning of the 70th week of Daniel. There will be 3.5 years of peace, followed by 3.5 years of tribulation. Truth. God foresaw everything just as it happened in the Gospels. A prophecy cannot A prophecy clock cannot stop or slow down or change rate at the time of passing. The 70th week continued and came to an end before 40 AD. Jeez. But you see, these are just the different, false doctrines and stuff of, modern day Christianity right here. There's a lot of them, actually, a very lot of them. And you can see it's got all the dispensations and all this. It's like, yeah, there's nothing more BS about this than, you know, we just seem to be disproven 6 ways from Sunday. Everything that they say about it. It's like there's nothing built on scripture and all of this. They're like trying to calculate the days and times and all this, trying to put it down to an art. And it's like no man knows when. You couldn't possibly know. And then you're teaching this, and they put these pamphlets, this Schofield Study Bible too. This was a thing where it was basically based on something very similar to what we've seen with the Secrets of Fatima, right? Like it was a girl's vision, basically, and it was, you know, written about and put in a pamphlet, and that when Freemasonry like took over the United States the way that they did, and they put these fraternal orders everywhere, through Christianity, and this was a Freemasonic printing press. Schofield was a Jesuit, all of this, right? Like the last name what he was as well, right? Schofield. um and they put these pamphlets of this pre-tribulation doctrine in all the Bibles, and they sent it out for free all the way across America. It was bankrolled and funded, by the Jesuits, and uh, this fake doctrine, and then it became basically, household doctrine for all of the churches of the world. It's like now every church kind of spits this same shit out. Like if you think about it, there's not a church around that doesn't kind of like push, this pre-tribulation, all of this, right? Like it's there everywhere you look. It's there. So. And what they're essentially doing is they're creating an egregore out of all of this stuff. That's what they're doing. They're creating an egregore out of all of this stuff, whether they think they are or not. Um, but there comes like a point in our lives where, we gotta like, we gotta decide, um, what's more important to us, how we feel about something, or because we was raised this way. It's like, how stubborn and rigid can we be to like have everything in our face to know that something is BS and then still continue to believe it because the pastor said so? He's just a man like you, and he's definitely being motivated to just say so, because of who he's getting paid by, how he's getting paid, where he got his degree, all of that, like I mentioned earlier, right? He's got every reason to continue to push this narrative, the American rapture. This is the wrong one here. But, so think about that just being disseminated, like I said, right? The whole Schofield thing. Shit. And basically taking America by storm. We have the post millennialism, pre-millennialism, all of these things. I feel like they're all simply BS nonsense that's been spun. And it's all. And remember, the Bible says that they're teaching these doctrine of devils, right? And that It's in the strong delusion in that, men will not teach sound doctrine, but, the delusions of their own mind. And I feel like there is no bigger time, like we see something that correlates to that than what we do now. No. It's going to take me into this now. So there's like a series of events of things that have to, happen in essence, right? Like for all of this to kind of take off. I want you guys to look to, here, let me pull this up real quick. You guys to look at, get this new image of Atlas right here. Take a look at that, man. Look at that. This is Atlas behind the sun right now. Like, there is nothing crazy. We're on you can't tell me by looking at that we're not on the verge of something just fucking huge. We are on the verge of something huge. Look at what's going on. The United States, we're sending, stealth bombers and warships and all of this stuff, right, to Venezuela's coast. You can go on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, anywhere where I have reels or shorts, TikTok. And you can see, China with their stealth bombers literally circling us as we're sitting out there off of the coast of Venezuela, and Russia making its threats to intervene as we're getting involved with Venezuela, right? And trying to, take Maduro out. What's going on with the persecutions of the Christians over in Africa? What's going on with, Israel, Palestine, and just all of this. Like, look at the world right now, the drying up of the Euphrates. It's damn near, it's dry. What about Damascus and what we've done with Syria and all that? These are like all prophecies of like, it lets you know like when we are in that time. And then you have this crazy interstellar object that appears bluish green from a distance and then is red when you get up on it. And now it's sitting behind the sun, just like kind of what was told about, the destroyer, purifier, all these other, the Kachinas, all this stuff, and I'm not saying it is that, but I'm saying it's pretty crazy, and just how all of this is kind of correlated to like, the great sign, September 23rd, 2017, the woman and the dragon, right? Where Jupiter was given birth in the constellation of Virgo, wearing a crown of 12 stars upon her head, which was the constellation of Leo the king, right? The lion of the tribe of Judah. And it had Mars, Mercury, and Venus in conjunction, creating those 12 stars. And you had the sun over her shoulder, the moon under her feet. And for the gestation of 42 weeks or 9 months, Jupiter was in her womb, and then he was given birth to. She would give birth to a male child who will rule the nations with an iron rod or an iron scepter, and Jupiter is known as the king planet, right? Crazy, right? Crazy. Hasn't happened in 7,000 years and won't happen again. That particular celestial alignment. It's like we really need to wake up and then think about the great Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, December 21st, 2020. Right? These Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions always correlate in a reset following shortly after, in large resets. right? The last one that we have is less than precise, was 400 years ago, and we had a smaller reset, right? Not a whole full reset, but I believe that's when the mud floods and stuff like that happened. And then before that, 800 years ago, who knows if that's when like Sodom and Gomorrah happened? I mean, it's almost 1,000 years ago, and that was the last big conjunction, you know? And then lo and behold, the 1,260 days after the great sign, March 21st, 2021, we have the asteroid Apophis, the god of chaos and darkness, the Egyptian god, right? Which is the king of the bottomless pit, Apep, Pepi, Apophis, Abaddon, Apollyon, Sheba, right? And it's returning in just a couple of years, and it's got the potential to hit the earth. This is just all these different things, and then think about what happened right after, this great conjunction in Apophis. That's when all the mandatory vaccinations. Now we've got the digital IDs and stuff starting in countries too. It's like, it seems like the mark of the beast is almost on our doorstep. When you look at like the connections, to Trump and the Antichrist taking the fatal wound to the head and living. The comparisons of King Cyrus the Great, right? That's what they were calling him, the return of King Cyrus in 2016. You don't remember? Right? The Jews were calling him King Cyrus, he was the outsider who became the king of Babylon, and Babylon fell in his 4th year. And in his 4th year, in reality, when he was the outsider who became the modern day king of Babylon, we had the Transition Integration Project of 2020, which was a false flag exercise for this election fraud and all of this, right? Where 2 out of 3 scenarios, Biden would win a contested election. They would claim, Trump would claim that there was an election fraud. The whole narrative that you actually got. And then 30,000 National Guard troops occupied the nation's capital as there was a transition of power. Right? Also, think about the comparisons to the king who was, but was not, and is yet to come. And then him being 45, and he was, and then he was not with 46, and he's yet to come with 47, right? The 9/11 president, right? Like, you can keep going, right? Going and going. And then think about the Hopi prophecies, and they talk about the red hat and the red MAGA hats that they wear. Or the fiery red horse who takes peace from the earth. And then think about the division and everything that's being sown in the world right now. Remember, the Antichrist seems to have all the solutions to all the problems, and he deceives all the Christians and all of this, and it's like, you can't tell me that's not happening right now. And then he turns against, his people. He turns against Israel. He turns against everybody. Like, think about it. It's a possibility. It's something we should at least be looking at. And when people just completely fucking dismiss it and act like there's no, like, oh, this is impossible. It's because, why? Because you feel like you don't want it to be possible? You fucking moron. You don't want it to be possible. You have cognitive dissonance, and that's why it's not possible. Like, this is what drives me crazy about all of this stuff. It's like, because people don't want things to be true, they act like it can't be. Same thing with like the, Israel and Zionists and all of this, and when we're talking about egregores and golems and all of this in just a moment, you'll see where all that actually originates from, right? And it's like a useless thing of clay that they can manipulate. It's a slave without a soul, and they believe that you don't have a soul. Only they do. So some supremacist shit if I've ever seen it. People need to wake up to what's actually taking place in the world. It's like this ain't fear porn or doom and gloom. It's we fear what we do not understand. So the only way that we can overcome fear is by understanding. Learning. Knowledge is power. That's why this is, a podcast for those with the eyes to see and the ears to hear. And you know what? I've resigned myself to the fact, and not in defeat, but just in humility, that this type of content is not for everyone. Not everyone's gonna get it. Not everyone's gonna see it. Not everyone's gonna recognize it. Not everyone can handle it. It takes a level of honesty that most people just don't have. To recognize when we've been duped, or we've been wrong about something, or we've been had. Most people are incredibly dishonest with themselves. So, they can't handle, honesty on any other level as well, or accountability on any other level as well. That's why you see the prominence of the new age stuff so much, right? It's new age this, new age that, because why? Because new age promises you spirituality without the responsibility, without the morality, right? I can be a free lover and bang whoever I want to bang because I'm in the new age, right? Trust me, new age girls are freaks. You know, met a few of them over the years. You know, and when it says, "Who is the liar but he who denies that Jesus is the Christ?" Right? So it's like, boom, this whole Christ consciousness thing. It's like saying we are the Christ. No, it says Jesus is the Christ, not you and Jesus are the Christ, just him. It's like, when are we going to actually follow those kind of things? Like actually what the Bible says. See, this is what happens with church. Churchianity pick and chooses the Bible verses that they read and that they use to support their arguments, as opposed to where we do deep dives and research. We look at the whole damn thing, because you can't understand it if you don't. And you have to understand the etymology of the words and where it's coming from and all of this. It's like, and even then, you still might not get it. Shit's real. It's really real. And look at this. These are just Bible verses on impact scenarios, right? Think of Three Eye Atlas. Think of Apophis. Eventually, one of them is going to be it. I looked, and when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth, as a fig tree drops its winter fruit when shaken by a gale. Then the sky vanished like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. Then the first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mixed with blood. And they were thrown upon the earth, and a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. Then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the seas became blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Then the third, and think about this. A third of the ships were destroyed. Why is there all these ships out in the ocean? Are we like at war? World War III? Like think about right now. Right? Is there like fleets out there because we're on some major conflict, you know? Like why is all these ships destroyed? You know, I'm just trying to, get your mind cooking here, you know? The second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown in the sea. A third of the living creatures seen died and destroyed. Third angel sounded, and a great star blazing like a torch fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. And this is when I was talking about how Revelation and Genesis coincide. They go, it's one after the other. It's just a repetitive thing. Revelation to Genesis, Revelation to Genesis, Genesis to Revelation, Genesis to Revelation. Back and forth. This story of a third of the angels being flung to the earth, or this star falling from heaven. Remember what the star actually is. It's a luminary or a heavenly host. It's an angel that's being flung to the earth. A supreme magistrate, an Elohim, a little g God. The great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. Notice it's all a third, right? A third of the angels rebelled. The name of the star is Wormwood, and a third of the waters became wormwood, and many people died because of the waters had become bitter. Now, I also want you to think about how Christ walks on water. Water in the occult and in the esoteric stands for our emotions. It also stands for like not just our emotions, but more in our emotions. But it can also stand for the physical as well, right? The waters of the firmament are separated, right? Waters above the firmament and below the firmament. This great star falls and turns the waters wormwood or radioactive or bitter, and the people die because of it. Is this like a fallen angel that poisons mankind by being down here? Causes us to fall away, and that's what the death is? Turning water to blood, turning us to a sacrifice. And I'm not saying this is what it is, but I'm saying consider that it could be other things and other than what we're told by, the traditional, spectrum of shit. Then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of their light might be darkened. See, think about this. This third of the angels that rebelled, a third of the stars, and their light might be darkened. They turn dark or evil, right? And a third of the day did not shine, and a third of the night likewise. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. The stars will fall from heaven. Those are the angels being cast down. That's what stars are. Stars, okay, so the luminaries is one word. We also have watchers, messengers, heavenly hosts, stars, planets, princes. These are all synonymous for the same thing. But in those days, after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven. For the stars of heaven and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be dark at its rising, and the moon will not shed its light. And I will show wonders in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke, like the destroyer, right? He has the blood dripping from his mouth, and he turns everything into blood, and he's fire and pillars of smoke, just like in the days of Exodus, right? It's how the Lord was. He was, fire by night, and they followed him in a cloud by day, with a ruddy red glow. The sun shall be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood, before the great and awesome day of the Lord. Judgment Day. you know? It's like we are really at a place, man, where things have definitely accelerated, right? And accelerated in a major way. A major way. You see, and everything correlates, right? These stars, all this to the fallen angels, right? The sons of God being thrown, their ass being thrown down. So Genesis is Revelation, Revelation is Genesis. The end is the beginning is the end. That's what happens when you live in a cyclical reality. Nothing new under the sun. It just cycles. It's on repeat. It's a loop. Notice everything operates in the heavens as celestial spheres, right? Circles. They're orbits, right? Orbits around the sun, orbits. It's a circle. They're just looping around. Same loop, same loop, same loop. That's why, we experience the same things of old that we do in the future. And when people say, oh, we're in Satan's little season, it's already happened. Okay, sure it has, bud. You wish. You wish, just like you wish with your new age fucking bullshit where, that you're equal to God. Or that you are God. That's playing off of your pride and your ego, making you think you're special and all of this, right? Like, that's all it really does. It's like, we get so smoked by the new age stuff, it's not funny, And people don't see it either. It's very, very, very tempting. Very tempting. And I'm not here to call nobody out that, teaches this or whatever, but I don't believe none of it's any good. Like I said, I've seen where it leads you, and it leads you to some dark places. And I never, ever thought I would be one of those guys to be like, oh, like, I used to, I used it as an out for myself, right? To not hold myself accountable. Like, oh, well, I can do tarot and astrology and witchcraft and all of that. It's up to my interpretation of what I consider to be good and evil. It's all of that inverted fucking reality of like, oh, well, where does good end and evil begin? Da 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 da. It's like I fell for it. Because I wanted to. At a subconscious level, I didn't want to be accountable. I didn't want to be moral. I wanted, And why do you think these people have these Kundalini syndromes and shit like that when they practice yoga and all of this stuff? I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's like, I had a weird bout with some Kundalini stuff myself, where it felt like my spirit kept trying to leave my damn body. after I had, uh, Kundalini and, third eye experience. And, it's like I was doing everything I could to, like, close that back up. Because I felt like I just anything could walk into me, and I felt like I was being pulled, my energy, like I could not hold my soul in my body, literally. It was weird. Um, and it's not to say that the new age stuff isn't real, it's real. The deities, the entities, the energies, the consciousness, it's all real, but it's not the source. So everything not source, everything not God, it's corrupt, it will corrupt eventually. That's why whenever we see movements and stuff like that, like, on the earth, it's like, whether it's like for a noble cause or not, it always becomes corrupted because we're corrupt. I feel like we're literally quarantined here. I feel like we're literally quarantined here. You ever read the Urantia papers? That's what it says. Like the Lucifer Rebellion is a quarantine. That's why we're in a closed system with a firmament. Because we fell for that mind virus, and oh, surely you'll not die, you'll be like God, knowing the difference between good and evil. It's like, yeah, before we didn't have no fucking evil. The only difference was we just allowed evil in, you know? Didn't make us like God at all. It just killed us spiritually. It just enslaved us spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and, has us farmed for energy by these disgusting entities that, and remember, they were cursed, right? To eat the dust. What was Adam made of? From the dust. Like, I hope, like, people can take away anything. It's like you have something special in you because you are human. That's why you have dominion over all the demons and all of that, because God truly does reside in you, and He doesn't reside in these fallen angels or entities no more. They have separated themselves and cut themselves off from life. The only way they can have life is by feeding on you. I'm going to wrap this one up. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for joining me tonight for part one and part two. I feel like I went a while. I'm getting tired. So I will pick this back up tomorrow night. Like I said, I'm going to start going hard again on the lives and all of this. So, um, you know, uh, if you appreciate my content, appreciate my work, all that good stuff, please consider donating, supporting the channel. Um, 1,000 people, see this or whatever, and everybody donated $1, that'd be $1,000 right there. Like, uh, you know, um, I need new equipment and all kinds of stuff so I can really get myself back where I need to be. But, uh, I'm going to do it for sure. So I'm determined. Um, and like I said, join the memberships, Patreon, locals on Rumble, or you can just donate support each month and I'll send you the links any way you want to do it. Sundays, we're going to do the, private shows, the subscription membership shows. for those interested. Start doing that this Sunday. Check out my channels, Facebook, Instagram, at Best Damn Podcast. I post reels and all types of stuff daily still. I'm still going to do that. Because that's a good way to just disseminate that kind of stuff, and then be able to do what I really love with the long form. Follow me, also Twitter, The Real Best Damn, rumble.com/user Best Damn Podcast, rumble.com Best Damn Podcast, rumble.com The Best Damn Podcast, youtube.com Best Damn Podcast Official and Best Damn Podcast, BitChute Best Damn Podcast, True Social Best Damn Podcast. I'm basically everywhere. Best Damn Podcast, The Real Best Damn or Best Damn Podcast Official. Basically all of it. All the links are in the description. Please hit the like, the thumbs up, share this link for me, help me to get it out there. That's the best way to support me is by manually sharing it to your Facebook, your Instagram, your Twitter, and liking my posts, commenting on my videos, like following my channel, subscribing. That's like the best way to help me. And everybody, please go follow me on Rumble. That's like that's the main spot for me now. Consider donating, supporting paypal.me /the Best Damn Podcast, cash.app /Best Damn Podcast, patreon.com Best Damn Podcast Official, or Facebook Pay, facebook.com John Keane Best Damn Podcast. And everybody that will donate and support and tip and all that good stuff, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, Jesus is the truth, the way, and the life. God bless you all. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Peace.